Welcome to Monkey See,
Monkey Review.
where this week we're going to be covering the brand new release from Marvel over in cinemas, The Eternals.
Yep. So, before we go into any type of spoilers or anything,
There'll be some.
there will be some. But before we do that, I guess the biggest thing would be disclaimer: if for family friendly,
Yeah,
this movie does have a sex scene in it.
it does.
And
the
then
first
does-
Marvel sex scene.
The
which,
first Marvel sex scene,
Awkward.
very awkward, very pointless to the story.
Yes.
Did not need to show it at all. They just wanted to put it in there. And then also the first
Homosexual
kiss.
relationship and kiss.
Yeah.
So, for family friendly, the people who are going to be offended by that, hey, this might be the one you want to wait and rent, or you might want to watch it without the kids and then make your assessment.
Yeah. But beyond that,
Yeah, beyond that. So, okay. We don't want to do a whole movie breakdown.
yeah.
We want to talk about a few of the good things, a few of the things we didn't like, and then just kind of give a rating. Brandon, overall, without going into details yet, what did you think about this movie?
It was interesting. It was very different than any other Marvel movie we've ever seen.
Yes.
Had a very different tone to it. It was artistically beautiful
Yes.
as far as like the scenes and their
the color palette.
yes, and even their CGI and things like that were very well done. A lot of things I really liked about that aspect of it. Some of the characters were okay. For as long of a movie as it was, you didn't have a whole lot of connection with the characters.
Yes.
You know.
Yep.
But what about you?
I am very. I'm towards the lower end of, oh, yeah, I like this movie. There are a lot of things, like you said, stylized, artistically, things that I really enjoyed. But for somebody who literally up until like probably 2 or 3 months ago, when we started getting close to the movie, I started really diving into a lot of the Eternals myth, lore, and, storylines. And I was like, okay, this could be a really cool story. And I really feel like I just wasted 2 to 3 months of learning all these characters.
Yeah.
Because so much of it, even in the comic books, there's a part of this that sets up a huge part of the Marvel comic book franchise. The Eternals and the Celestials and Deviants and the other, humans that actually get the X gene from this. Like, all that's wiped away in this movie. Like, and I get it. There's a lot of history there that it's going to be hard to bring into a 2.5 hour movie.
Yep.
And this, I think, is one of the longest Marvel movies.
It is. It's a very long movie.
Yes, it's I think 2 hours and 39 minutes, or maybe that's the new Spider-Man coming out. Yes, new Spider-Man's 2 hours. 30, I think this was clocking in at 2:45.
Yeah. It was a long movie.
Yeah, and it felt like a long movie.
It did feel like a long movie.
Yeah.
A lot of slow pace to it, which is I don't mind slow pace
Yes.
if you're doing a lot of good storytelling. And some of it was, but then some of it was just kind of like, eh.
This didn't feel like a Star Wars. This didn't feel like a Marvel movie to me. This felt like Marvel decided to bring over somebody from Warner Brothers to help do a Marvel DC movie.
Yeah, it did have that kind of tone to it. It was even darker in their
Yes.
color grade to it. It was just okay. I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, Marvel's done a really good job with their first, like, origin story
Yeah.
movies, and they've been some of the best that have come out from Marvel. Even some of their sequels haven't been as good as their original movies.
Right.
And this one, I'm hoping that the sequel's way better because
Right.
this one didn't really hit the mark. Like you said, I didn't do a lot of research on the
Right.
Eternals beforehand, so I kind of wanted to go into it with an open mind. Okay,
Right.
what are they going to do? And even not knowing a whole lot, it's kind of like some of the characters I feel like they wasted.
Yeah.
And they had just so much more potential
Yes.
through the story.
Yes.
One thing I did like about one of the actors in the film, which I thought was really cool on Marvel to do this, but she's actually deaf in real life.
Yes.
So I thought it was really cool, and how they even brought in some sign language and things like that. So I think that's pretty awesome.
And there was a lot of other stuff too, that just behind the scenes footage of her communicating with Angelina Jolie, because there will be times where they have their back to the camera and then they say action and they're supposed to turn around, and she kept missing her mark. And she was telling Angelina Jolie that she was frustrated, and Angelina Jolie is like, well, let's figure out a way to make this. So they worked on some things to actually make that better. So that's really cool. There was and there's a lot of representation in this movie. We have white, we have Hispanic, Indian, we have a lot of different nationalities.
Yeah, they
and-
covered
Yes.
pretty much everything.
Yeah, I mean, and
Throughout
I
the entire
like that.
movie.
I really did like that. I thought that was really a good thing because, unfortunately, a lot of these characters were written in a time where most of the characters were predominantly white. So we had a lot more representation.
Which I don't mind them doing that.
No,
Like, that's
at all,
never had a
at
problem with them
all.
changing out things like that.
Ajak actually in the comics for a long period of time was a man, and in this one she is a female and very much the strong mother figure in this movie, which I loved that aspect of her. I thought that was a great change. I thought that was a really smooth transition like that for her to be the mother leader-esque person of the Eternals. She really was able to bring that home and really made you believe that she was a mother figure.
Yeah, they had like certain stories that they did that were good, and then some of them kind of like, okay, this didn't really hit the mark.
Right. I felt like half of the movie was really on point. I really liked them talking about the origins of the Eternals, their power sets. I liked the Deviants. I thought
Yeah.
the Deviants were gorgeous.
Yeah,
Very ugly beast monsters that they were, but the color palette, their different abilities, their style, I thought they were great. The ginormous minotaur looking deviant that attacked Babylon, like I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Those aspects I liked, but I felt like, and I think somebody, I'm quoting somebody else saying the movie was 75% dialogue. And when you go into a Marvel movie, and I think
that's not the norm.
that's not the norm. I think that's partly to play against us because we're going in expecting a typical Marvel movie-ish. Not exactly like what we're used to, but something a little bit more that feels a little bit more like home. And
I can
this
see
just
why
didn't
they
hitting the mark.
They did it because you're bringing in such a vast storyline and trying to do an origin story in a 2.5 hour, 2 hour, 45-minute movie. And it's not just one character.
Right.
So, we do these other origin stories. There's one character that we're following through that, and some side characters that end up becoming main characters.
Yes.
But for this, there's so many main characters that you're following through the entire film.
You're getting 10 Eternals.
Yes. So it's very hard to cover all of that in one movie, and they did a fairly good job of, for the most part. I think that they're going to have to go back in the sequel and even do some more backstory
Yes.
in that because they're on Earth. Going into spoilers now. They're on Earth for over 7,000 years.
Right.
We don't get a lot of time and backstory with a lot of the characters.
Yeah.
We do a lot of time jumping, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And I liked how they kind of had that set up throughout the movie. It wasn't like in the beginning we go bam, bam, bam. It's kind of spread out how they do the story.
Essentially, the story is we're trying to get the band back together, kind of a story.
Yep.
And each time we go to get another member of the band, another one of the Eternals, they do a flashback to a moment where that character had a big significant moment in the past.
Yep.
So you get a little bit of their history, like for that specific character, and then you get the story of why they broke up, as they're bringing people back in, which I liked that. I thought that was a really cool take on it. But again, the fact that they changed so much, like in the comics, the Deviants are intelligent. In this, they're not. They're not intelligent. They are just a predator.
Not until
Not until,
towards the end of the film.
right. So we don't want to go into the whole movie because, it's a long movie.
It's a long movie.
So, and I think that also played against it. The fact that it was a long movie and it felt like a long movie.
Yeah, it did.
But
See, Dune was good. Dune was that long.
yes,
But Dune, I felt, grabbed you better than this movie did.
yes, I agree.
As far as the story, how they progressed it through start to finish.
Yes.
And then they're mixing with story and action, things like that.
And the growth of the characters.
And the growth of the
things like that.
characters, yeah.
So,
So, you pretty much follow one Eternal through most of the
Right.
film. I mean, kind of the primary, I guess you
Right.
would say, character through this. And she gets fairly good story.
Cersei.
Yeah, Cersei. She gets pretty good story development through the overall arc of the entire movie. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I mean, you get some, like I said, little snippets here and there from the rest of it, and you figure out the whole overall plan and
Right.
the whole plot of the movie.
Yeah, it definitely left me with a lot more questions by the end of the movie,
Yes.
especially after there's a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene. So after both of those, you have so many more questions
Yeah.
than
So-
you have answers.
Yeah. So we're gonna go into heavy spoilers now.
Yeah.
At this point, so if you're still watching this, hopefully you've watched the movie.
Yeah,
So yeah, ending of the movie, right?
yeah,
Pretty interesting how they do everything and how they're unlocking her full potential at the end
Right.
of the film. They ended up realizing that Earth is a celestial being that is in the process of coming to life.
yes,
At this certain
The
point, and their whole
ascendance.
mission is to populate the Earth and get them to the point where there's enough energy
yes.
on the planet for this celestial to rise up.
Essentially, absorb all the life from the planet. Intelligent life, not just life, has to be intelligent life.
Yep.
So that this new eternal can be birthed to go on and create more
worlds.
universes
Yep.
and other planets and things
Yep.
like that with life.
Yep. So then we find out that they've been doing this for years. That every time,
Millions
Yes.
of years.
and every time that they do this, they have their memories wiped, and the
Eternals?
the Eternals have their memories wiped, but the main celestial that they work for saves them, so he can learn from them
Yes.
and learn how to make sure that they continue doing their jobs.
Right.
And so essentially they stop it, and then they all kind of go their separate ways for the most part.
Let me throw this out there. So essentially, there's a celestial being birthed. They have to come together, use a new power that they have figured out called the Unimind, which in the comic books is something they've always been able to do.
I was gonna say, yeah, if Ajax
Ajax.
had not been killed in the film,
Right.
she already knew how to do this.
Yes.
Right. So she was already kind of training, which find out, she was already kind of training to save the Earth anyways.
Yeah.
And then
And
Icarus
someone, yeah. Icarus kills her.
kills her. And then Ajax chooses Cersei
Right.
to take her place. She has no idea what her new powers are.
Right.
Because she's taken the orb that helps them communicate with their celestial.
Yes.
And so she has no idea what she's doing. They eventually figure out, okay, she can do this without having some new device and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So yeah, it was very interesting. Like I said, if she hadn't died, it would have been much easier for them
Yeah.
to do. And I think the band would have been,
Yeah.
stuck together at that point.
Yeah.
But,
For me, it was okay. But here's my big question. We have a celestial that is birthed halfway out of the planet now. We have a giant head, a hand coming out of the ground, and it's there. It's just still there.
yeah, what are we going to do about that?
Right. Where do we go with this? Like, is this going to be a plot point later where somebody else comes along and tries to harness essentially the power that could be lying dormant? Or is this just going to be like the eighth wonder of the world? We're going to have tour boats going around it. I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know. And it's
They didn't
things like
answer
that
it.
that really just like, what?
Yeah, I thought the same thing because it seemed like there was a very high
Yeah.
peak, too, for the head.
And did you notice how the head looked like it was almost the same dimensions as the fingers?
I thought the head was a little bit bigger.
It was, but it was very strange. Like, it just didn't look proportionate to me. And I was just like,
See, you didn't have the full head out of it either. So.
right. Yeah, I know. We only had like two of that out of the three.
But his whole head wasn't even out. The
Right,
back of his
yeah.
head wasn't out yet. So.
But it just felt odd to me.
Yeah,
It was, yeah.
yeah, a lot of unanswered questions through the entire thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yep. So Icarus betrayed everybody.
Yep.
All right. He knew the entire time, and then he was with Cersei,
Yep.
and then he ended up leaving because he didn't want her to find out because she loves Earth. Right. That's
Yes.
been her thing the entire time. She loves the people of Earth. She wants to save them. So he leaves her after 5,000 years, and which sets up the groundwork for her new boyfriend to come in, Dane,
Yep.
and big character for future projects coming in.
Yes.
But yeah, but at the end, Icarus ends up not succeeding in his plan to allow the emergence to continue.
Right.
And they stop it. And then he flies into the sun.
Yeah.
Completely waste of a character.
Thank you.
I mean, just absolutely is like, all right, he chose not to finish his mission because he loved her
Right.
so much. He wasn't going to kill her.
Right.
And then they finish the mission, and he just looks at it and flies up into the sun.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Like, it was one of those moments where it's like, I'm just going to remove myself from the chessboard so that this character is done. I hope they do bring in some of the elements from the comics, because in the comic books, we see the machine where they're being created, and we see thousands of clones of them. I'm hoping that they will reactivate him into another body.
I'm sure that surely they will.
I hope they actually do that with the majority, because there's so many of the Eternals that bite the bullet in this one.
Yes. Yes.
And it's very saddening,
It is. It is.
because you're just meeting some of these characters and you're like, oh, this would be a really great character. This is really great potential. And they're just like, no.
We're gonna axe it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I walked out underwhelmed.
Yeah. If it hadn't been for the 2 end credit scenes,
Yes. I feel like this movie would have been a complete wash.
basically, I felt like this whole movie set up just for the end credits. Like
Yeah.
the very end of the film,
Yeah.
where Cersei's back with Dane,
Right.
and he's about to tell her his family's secret,
Yeah.
right? And if it wasn't for that and the 2 end credit scenes, this movie would have been just like a wash.
Yeah. It just didn't have any appeal to me. This is taking a team of 10 people and being like, okay, we're going to give you a little bit of their life,
Yep.
but you're supposed to care about them like you care about other characters that you have met throughout the rest of the MCU. And it just didn't hit. No. It missed for me.
Yep.
There was a lot of characters I did like. I would have liked to have seen. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with Sprite. I want to see some of the characters come back. Like I said, there's a machine out there that can reproduce these bodies, and you can take their minds that have been backed up on a hard drive somewhere
Yep.
and just plug them back in. So we could see all these guys come back and all these ladies come back.
But we do know from the very end credit scene that basically they're going to go find them.
Yes.
And so we have potential for that to actually happen.
Yes.
Like they're going to go back basically to where they were created.
We get introduced to 2 more characters that we've never seen in the MCU. That we've seen them both in comics, but there's Pip the Troll and there is Eros, who is also known as Star Fox, who is actually the twin brother to Thanos.
Yep.
So
Very
it's like,
interesting.
Like when we got news that he was that Harry Styles is going to be playing Eros, Star Fox.
Yeah, like a
and-
couple weeks ago,
Yeah,
right?
like 2 or 3 weeks
Yeah.
ago. So I was expecting that to really come in with Guardians of the Galaxy or their holiday special.
Yep.
But them throwing it in at the end of this movie was a complete shock for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm okay for it.
Oh, I'm totally in for that.
Yeah. Like it was cool. I was like, okay, I'm now intrigued.
Yeah. Okay.
And you have me for the next movie.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, I was going to see the next movie anyways, but now I'm like, okay, now I really want
I
to
have
see
actually
the movie.
interest in it.
Yeah,
Alright, so
exactly.
are we going to see the Eternals again in other Marvel films, or is it just going to be Eternals 2?
Yeah.
You know, where,
Well, in the comics, and I know I bring a lot of the comic books into this, Eros, Star Fox, was one of the Avengers. Like, he fought against them, and then they realized that he wasn't, like, an absolute horrible person, and they actually brought him onto the team. So, we could see that. I'm interested.
Yep.
And then the very last credit scene was what really just set it off for
Yes.
everybody.
yes.
Like, the whole crowd was just like, whoa, whoa. So you get Dane Whitman. He's talking about his, he's kind of having a moment where he's like trying to talk himself into doing something.
And so he's on a box. He's opening a box. He's like, all right. Because we don't really know. Everyone kind of suspects because of his character, you know. But
Right.
if you don't know anything about the comics or some backstory, all right, what's going to happen, right? All right? Who is this guy? You know, he's pumping himself up for something.
Yes.
And then he finally opens the box
Yes.
to reveal the blade, which
Yeah,
is called
the Ebony Blade.
Ebony Blade, which they kind of make a reference to that earlier in the film too,
Yeah.
which was cool. But
They definitely set they set that up really well.
Yeah.
Through that moment, I was
Yeah.
just like, oh,
Yeah.
they nudged it. They nudged it.
so I'm all for like King Arthur
Yes.
tie-ins. Like I love that story. I love Excalibur, and then now that they're bringing this into the cinematic universe where there's some tie-in with that,
Yes.
I'm all for it.
Yes.
So he is essentially going to become the Black Knight, right? So he has inherited this sword from his uncle
Yep.
in some way. And I'm assuming they're going to change the origins for this a little bit,
think so.
backstory, because they haven't done anything with it, so it's kind of hard for them to do, I guess.
I don't know. I think that we could get a throwback scene to King Arthur's court and the Merlin and the
That would be
Ebony
cool. I was thinking more of like when the uncle, like whenever he stops.
Well, I think that's what it's going to lead into is like it being passed down,
Yeah,
and then you actually get the uncle for a little bit of the scene. I think we're gonna have some throwback scenes to that of him having the blade.
Yeah, which that would be cool. But I was wondering because Iron Man eventually fights his
Yes.
uncle and then wounds him to the point where he can no longer wield the blade. So that's why I'm not sure if they're going to tie that in or not.
It would be interesting.
It would be interesting, but I'm not sure if they'll do that or not. But
I hope so.
yeah.
I really hope so.
So as cool as that scene was, right? And then you see him about to touch the blade, and the blade is reacting
And
to
the
him.
blade is like actually like moving towards him, like what we've seen with the Venom symbiote,
Yeah.
where it's like actually going towards
Yeah,
the.
it's drawn to
Yes.
him because there's a connection to him.
And there's some voiceover work, some whisper, like some very ethereal, like oh something about to happen.
And the box says, "Death is my reward."
Yes,
Right? And then, so he's about to grab the blade, and then what happens?
we hear a voice from the back saying, "Are you something along the lines of Are you ready for this?" Or
Are you ready for this, kid? Or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. And everyone's just like,
And
wait,
then it goes to black, like
wait, what?
the guy jumps around like, "What? Who's in the room with me?" And boom, movie's gone.
So, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It has now been released who the voiceover is. And it is, I can't remember the actual actor's name, but it is the gentleman who is playing Blade.
So they're bringing Blade in
Yes. Yes.
at the end of Eternals with the
Yes.
Black Knight. I have no idea what they're going to do with this.
We're going in a supernatural direction.
Yeah. It's just interesting, though, because it's like no
Yes.
one has expected both of these end credit scenes. No one expected either one of them to be in this film. As far as we knew that Dane was going to become the Black Knight.
Right.
They've already kind of said that, and that the actor said, I've been set up for future projects.
Yes.
Awesome. I love the actor, too. But for them to bring in Blade at this point, okay. So very interesting trend for this, where Marvel's going, because, Blade's probably going to be an R-rated movie. You would suspect.
If it's not, I feel like we're throwing away a good vampire story.
Yeah. Or it's going to be borderline, PG-13 rated R.
Yeah. It's going to be bumping that line very closely, but I think it's going to be a rated R movie because I know that they've been talking about pushing it in that direction for the
Just
first
because
rated
of
R.
the violence
Yes.
that would be in that film.
Yes.
So I'm on board.
Yeah, I'm 100% in. So let's do this. But that's essentially the movie.
Yep.
That's the post-credit scenes. And like we said, post-credit scenes are the things that we got the hype for. Like that was the most exciting thing for us. What would you give it on a scale of 1 to 5?
The whole movie, I'm gonna have to go like a 3, and I feel like
Yeah.
I'm being generous in that.
I'm going a 2.5, dude. Like for real, for me, it would have been lower than a 2, except for the post-credit scenes gave it.
Yeah.
And it's just because I don't. And people are going like, you're hating because of this. No, I just didn't get it. The characters.
Even
like,
if
they
you take out the
didn't
2
draw
scenes
me
that I
in.
really felt like were pointless to the film that I
Yeah.
didn't agree with, even if you take that out,
Yeah.
I'd still a 3 for me just because it was an okay movie.
Yeah.
Like I'd give it a 3 just because of the cinematography
Right.
and the visuals and things like
Yes.
that, the CGI through it.
Yes.
I'm all for that. I thought it was awesome.
Yep.
Looked beautiful. And then the 2 end credit scenes setting up just so much,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so much unknown with what's coming next, which is great. And there's pretty much no one knew that was coming,
Right.
so which is beautiful. I love you, Marvel, for that. I love it when you actually can keep a secret and
Yeah.
you actually reveal it. Okay, that's great. But yeah, beyond that,
Yeah.
it's an okay movie.
Yeah, it was okay. It's one of those, and unless you're one of the Marvel fans that wants to see everything in theaters, I don't think it's one of the ones you have to watch in theaters.
No.
Yeah, I think you can really just be like, okay, that was cool.
Yeah, I saw there was a director that came out and said, if you're not watching this movie in 3D or 4DX, watch it at home.
Yeah,
It's not worth watching in theaters.
yeah, and I would actually like to go back. And we saw it in a large screen.
Yeah, it wasn't
It wasn't IMAX, but
which
it was the closest one to us that wasn't going to.
standard
Yes,
theater.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it was good. It was all right.
It was okay.
Yeah. So tell us in the comments what you think, because I really want to hear somebody else's input on this. I've
Yeah.
talked to several people who've seen it now, and this generally is the consensus that it was an okay movie, that it wasn't an amazing movie.
Yep.
A lot of people were trying to find people to connect to in this movie, and they'd had a hard time doing
Yep.
that. We did too.
Yep.
So do us a favor, hit the like button,
Subscribe.
leave some comments, let's talk about this, and we will see you next time. Love you.
Bye, guys.